an account who defended me with 3 followers. He could be a pedo. I don't fucking know. I just retweeted it. So sometimes there's too much noticing and there's too many strings drawn and there's too much, people are looking for insult where it doesn't really exist. And I think that's one of the other things separate to Candace and Tucker, because that was very deliberate against you, as you've just explained. One of the other things that I catch flack for from your movement is I breathe in the wrong direction. And perhaps a Jew was pointing that way when he breathed in 1941. And before you know it, I've got these spurgs spamming all over Twitter. And the reason that that's a bad thing is not because I give a shit. It's because it genuinely delegitimizes what you're trying to do.
Well, and I think you're legit. I think that, as far as the Milo thing is concerned, the only reason I even mentioned it is because Candace did her show with me. She did her show with Tucker, and then she does a show with Milo. Elon Musk replies to Milo calling me a fed. Then you come in and kind of, you didn't really pick a side, but you sort of said the Brigitte Macron thing's legit, and you said the Reuters talk too much about the Jews, or that they blame the Jews or something, and then you retweeted Milo. It looked like it was coordinated. I hope you understand that. And totally. I think that people need to scrutinize these things because, as you know, and you're brilliant on politics. I consider you a friend too, and I consider what you have built to be one of the most positive things that's happened in the 2020s. And I even come down on your side when you're arguing with Catholics like Matt Walsh, because honestly, a lot of the Catholic, white right, they're pussies when it comes to women. And a lot of the trad stuff is 100% steered by women. So, I mean, your thing on patriarchy, in my opinion, is indispensable. It's literally indispensable. And it's like, it's actually a good thing that we're in the Tate generation of young kids that are saying, what color is your Bugatti and all. I think it's actually a really good thing. But with that being said, as far as these connections are concerned, I think transparency is the solution. Yeah. You coming on this and saying, hey, I just retweeted him just because. Okay, valid, legitimate. I hear you. But in a lot of these cases, typically where there's smoke, there's fire. And I like to draw these connections because this is how politics operates. You do get these networks that come together. There are networks of patronage. There are networks of money. I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of people came to me privately and said, I'm on your side. I agree with you, but I can't speak out against Tucker because he's done things for me, because he's a friend of mine. And I've heard that from a lot of people. I'm not going to name names. Some of them said it publicly. Glenn Greenwald, Ian Carroll. They said a lot of nice things about me. Dave Smith, too. But they also said, I don't even really want to weigh in because I like Tucker. Now, in our political battle, we actually have to be willing to criticize people. We have to be willing to scrutinize those kinds of things. And someone like Tucker, he's got some explaining to do. He said he didn't know his dad was in the CIA. He lied. He did know that. Now, if we're coming for the Matrix, and insofar as the Matrix is the deep state, we're going to need an answer on that. I would like an answer on that, as well as some of these other things. And so that's where it's like, I agree with you. There is 100%, there can be a schizo tendency. And unfortunately, when you introduce concepts like Palantir, a limited hangout, when you introduce that to low IQ people, they'll start seeing it everywhere. And unfortunately, it is true. I've seen it. People like trip on their shoelace and say this was a Palantir limited hangout. It does happen. But in many cases, we actually do need transparency on some of these connections, because it's not lost on me that, like Tucker Carlson, one of his critiques of me, he said that I am delegitimizing someone like JD Vance. And I said, well, wait a second. Tucker had JD Vance on his show 46 times. Tucker made a personal appeal to Trump to choose Vance as his nominee. Now, Candace does not seem to be gung-ho about Vance. So there might be some, like I said, I think Candace is different than Tucker, and they're both different than you. But when Tucker came at me with that, I said, wait a second. He's calling me CIA. His dad is CIA. His friend Joe Kent is CIA. His buddy JD Vance works for Peter Thiel, who's a CIA contractor. That's a lot of CIA. That's a ton of CIA going on. And he lied about what he knew about the CIA. That's where I say, okay, sometimes where there's smoke, there's fire. So, I 100% agree. There can be a tendency to get a little schizo, or maybe there's like a low IQ version of what we talk about. But I don't think I'm wrong about a lot of these connections. And, when you reposted Milo, and, maybe you'll admit it could have come across as a bad look. And that's why it's helpful when you said, that's how I know you're legit. A lot of people behind the scenes tell me, you got to press Tate. Tate's the enemy. Remind him his dad was in the CIA. What I respect about you is you talk to me. I have your number. I talk to you. I've been on streams with you. You're transparent. You said your dad is in the CIA. We didn't have to dig that out of anywhere. And to me, that's the difference. Is there that transparency? If you're transparent, we can ask the question, it gets answered, and we could say, okay, that's good enough. But if people hide or lie or they're not forthcoming, that's where there's a little scrutiny. So that's where I'm at on that. I do think it's important to look at some of those things.
No, it makes perfect sense. And just once again, from the very outside perspective, and I have to make it clear that I'm not as versed on all of these topics as a lot of the people who are watching this, but I've barely been online. I pop up online. I see there's this feud going on. The first thing I felt was a degree of sadness, to be honest. That's what I felt. And it was the same with Elon and Trump. I disagreed with Elon about H1B1. I think everybody did with a brain. Nobody wants that shit. It's a joke. But I think by and large, he's done fantastic things. I think that Twitter, if he never bought it, by now would be so fully locked down. I think he did help with the culture. I think he made some massive positive pushes in the correct direction. And maybe a lot of this is going to be personality driven. Perhaps this is just me from a personality perspective. But if somebody does something good, I try very hard to not forget what they've done. The internet is a very fast moving place. There's a lot of ungratefulness on the internet because you can do something amazing on a Monday and everyone hates you on a Tuesday because it's fun to hate people and it's interesting and trolling is fun. And that's kind of how it works. But when Trump and Elon started arguing and there was the big division, I felt a degree of sadness. When I saw that Tucker, Candace, and you didn't get along, I really, perhaps I'm a sentimental old man, I felt like we'd all be better if we were to a degree on the same team. And we're never all going to agree on everything. I like what you said about the transparency point. That's fantastic. Me, from a personality perspective, if there's orcs at my gate, I'm prepared to work with somebody who I disagree with on 99% of the problems besides let's kill the orcs. So I noticed as well, a lot of the Groypers are constantly retweeting and constantly hammering Tristan for supporting J.D. Vance. Well, J.D. Vance is the only American politician who talks about the fact that we don't have any freedom of speech in Europe. J.D. Vance was the only politician who talked about the fact that Romania, the country we're in, the country that locked us up, overthrew their own election. He's the only one who called it out. So perhaps at a deeper level, things I do not know, or there's some things about him I would not like, perhaps. But initially, the initial battle in Europe, we can't even talk. He's the only one sticking up for us. And it's kind of like this infinitely divisible problem, which is a problem we're going to have with the entire movement, especially if we're successful. The more successful we are, the more fragmented it's going to become. As I said, if we had a white-only nation, the Italians would fight the Spanish, who would fight the Germans. And before you know it, the North and the South would hate each other. And you'd be a Texan and you'd be from Chicago and everyone would hate each other again, even though we're all the same skin color. That's how it was before. That's why Europe was at constant war. So this infinite divisible problem is a real one. And we kind of have to find a way, especially, and this is me speaking out of turn because it's your movement, it's not my movement. But for you, I would say you have to kind of try to find a way to give some hard parameters and allow people who are not as intelligent as you, not as smart as you, not as well versed as you, and most of your fans are not going to be. That's why you're the star, to sit and say, okay, where does someone fall? Are they on the good side or the bad side? Because perhaps they did this and this and this, but by and large, they've done X, Y, Z. I always thought, in my infinite ignorance, that Ian Carroll was a good guy. He exposed things, and I watched his videos, and I thought, that's interesting, that's interesting, that's interesting. And then I saw his feed, and everyone was calling him a Jewish plant. And I'm like, what the fuck? Maybe I just don't know enough. Maybe I'm ignorant and dumb. But I was like, how the fuck is he a Jew? He's literally said the opposite the whole way through. So I do think this is some kind of issue which is going to be nearly impossible to solve because the internet's the internet, and this is how it works. And also, I will state this, even my movement, there are people in my movement who are retards, and they'll go to the gym and they'll hit their chest and they'll tell every woman to fuck off. And, they'll walk around with a gun saying they're a G, and they're fucking retards. And they're part of my movement. And that's going to be part of every single movement. That's part of it. I just think we need to try our very best if we want to make a serious political and genuine change. You're right. We have to draw connections. We have to notice patterns. That's what you've done fantastically. That's what you've built your brand on. And perhaps my transparency allows me to sit down and explain that my father was discharged dishonorably for not following orders and that we never even got a military pension and grew up destitute. You can all look that up online. Perhaps my transparency helps me, yes. But sometimes I see so much stuff being thrown around. I always like to think of things from the enemy's perspective. If I was them and I saw you fighting with Candace, fighting with Tucker, and then I retweet someone and then you say I'm part of them, and they're sitting there knowing none of us are part of them, they're laughing their fucking ass off. And I just think we have to be very conscious of that. That's the only point I'm making.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I just, then it's got to be all in the family because they instigated with me. I would have been glad to join up with Tucker. And honestly, here's what I'll say on the stream. I still am. Because it's true that Tucker is getting torched by a lot of his erstwhile Jewish or pro-Israel allies. Yep. There's no question about that. And same with Candace Owens. Yep. Candace and Tucker, and to your point, just to demonstrate, because I think I'm objective and I think I'm magnanimous, I think that Candace and Tucker, you're 1,000% correct. They have brought a lot of people closer to the truth. There is just no question. Candace with the women, Tucker with the normies. And, Candace with the normie women, I suppose, and you as well. I mean, but we're talking about them in this case, and you without a doubt as well. So I do believe there's room for cooperation. It's like we said before, though. If that's sort of my perspective, I'm sort of coming to Candace to join up, but she's telling me you're a racist anti-Semite, and I'd like to cooperate with Tucker, but he's calling me a Fed, and I'm this loser and all this. It's like, so I would extend the olive branch to someone like Tucker. And me, I have such a consciousness for the team. Me and Candace have a very vicious rivalry right now. For me, it is, and I say this, my right hand to God, it is not personality driven. It is not ego driven. I could forgive her tomorrow. I've called her a bitch like 100 times. And I know you probably don't love that, but I've called her a bitch a bunch of times. I could apologize for that tomorrow, and I could sit down and have dinner and be best friends tomorrow. The question is there that willingness on the other side to get on the same page? Is there that willingness to kind of open up the space for someone who is a little bit further to the right? I do believe that.
I get it. So I've got a question for the sake of our debate. So I would argue, and of course, once again, this is full of presuppositions. I'm just guessing here. I would argue that there's a degree of disingenuity when it comes to people saying that her Bridget series is not important or it's trash. And I think you made a clip on it. I didn't watch the whole clip, but you said something about how Macron is an enemy of Israel or something along these lines. And why is she going for Macron? I truthfully, and I'm saying this from the heart, and I've only watched 2 episodes of her series. I haven't even watched the whole thing. And I didn't even watch your whole clip. But I don't see how anyone can not think that's good journalism and not think it's hilarious. I really don't think it's genuine for people to sit and say that series was a setup somehow and she's working for the Russians somehow and that she's somehow working for the Jews because she did that. And I think that it's people disliking her, so instantly tarnishing her work. And I think that it's very important for us as professionals to be able to sit down and say, even if my worst enemy, I can sit and say, I don't like that person, but that work was good. Like, I think Matt Walsh, by and large, is not even a bad person. I think he just has no impact on the culture at all. I don't think anybody cares what he says. But when I saw some of his clips when he was making fun of the trannies, it was funny. Like, okay, cool. That's good work. Like, I don't care who makes the work if the work is good. And I noticed after your argument with her, everyone was saying that her Brigitte series was bullshit. I don't think it's unimportant, and I don't think it was bullshit. I think it was actually very informative, and I think it was quite an interesting story. And I think that if Macron is fucking his dad, we should know. And I also think that it's fucking hilarious how triggered he is. And I would argue that normally you, if you didn't have a beef with Candace, would also be saying the same thing, that this is funny, and Macron's pissed, and this is all hilarious? Or do you genuinely, your emotions, your feelings for Candace aside, really think that that piece of work is somehow bad work to do?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's actually the opposite. I liked
Okay.
Candace last year, and I hated the Brigitte Macron thing. I just didn't say anything because I didn't want to mess with her thing. I'll give you a counterexample. She did an interview with Phil Turney, who's a survivor of the USS Liberty. I thought that was excellent. I thought that was brilliant. Got huge coverage, totally drove the conversation forward. I could, I'm objective. I'm honest. I tell it like it is. I do have a major problem with Candace right now, but that was awesome. And unquestionably so. I'll tell you my issue with the Brigitte Macron thing. It's a couple of things. One, I think it's weird. I think it's weird that Candace is so hung up on the French president, because in America, we just don't really talk about Europe. We don't really care about Europe that much. It's just not something we're engaged in. So for her to have this laser-like focus on that, to me, it kind of gives me a weird feeling from the beginning. Then you delve into kind of the history there. And for a long time, there's been an effort to go after Macron from this crew. Like, I don't know if you know, but back in 2017, there was this huge effort to say that Macron was gay, and that was being pushed by Russian media. It was being pushed by Sputnik in Russia Today. They were quoting Julian Assange. They leaked all Macron's email 2 days before the election in 17. So there's been, for like 8 years, this concerted campaign to attack Macron personally, call him gay, say he's married to his dad. So that's another thing, is like it comes back over and over again. Then you get into the person pushing this, the guy, Xavier Poussard. He wrote the book, Becoming Brigitte. This guy's crazy. Like, the guy that originated the theory, it's very fringe in France. He believes in the QAnon stuff. He thinks he's working for Trump. He thinks he's working for Putin. The guy's nuts. And when you get down into the actual information, at the end of the day, their proof is that there's a photograph of the person they say Brigitte is as a child, and using this Chinese facial recognition, it says there's an 80% match to Brigitte Macron today. And I don't think that's super good journalism. I think the evidence is flimsy. And I would say maybe there's something going on there. Maybe Brigitte Macron is weird or something. But to me, the evidence is very flimsy. So that's my problem with it. And the reason that I even call it out, why not let it alone? The reason I call it out is because, one, if it's an angle from Russia or some other thing, then that needs to be called out by itself. But two, I think it's so kooky, it just makes us look bad. I think it's one of those things where maybe people watch the USS Liberty show, but then if you're talking about aliens and secret transgenders and the Frankists and, space isn't real, it's like, then we just look like we're crazy. So that's the other thing. But it's actually in reverse of what you said. If I liked Candace, I would not talk about my problems with it at all if we had a working relationship. But, since we're at odds, I'm more willing to criticize her. So it's totally the opposite.
Well, perhaps this is just a personal preference thing, but I think it's extremely important if we find out that the leader of a European nation, especially the nation which just overthrew the election here, by the way, one of the most important economies on the planet, and Europe is by and large America's ally and will have to be against China for the coming decades. If there is an elite pedophile ring which is in charge of his country, especially if you want to tie this to Epstein and everything else, and the fact that Keir Starmer's gay and all these things, the fact that we have all these homosexuals in power, I think would largely affect the culture. And we just talked about how the culture is so important. I would argue that it doesn't make us look kooky for investigating that. Very much like you said, we need to, if there's smoke, there's fire. And if there's the timing is weird, or there's a string here, or there's a link there. I think that she did a fantastic job on the series, and I think it's pretty important. And I'm just surprised from a personal level, you don't find it hilarious that Macron's having a breakdown. I just thought that you would find it funny like I did. When I saw the legal letters, me and Tristan were laughing our ass off. It's funny. The same as Keir Starmer talking about me all day. I think it's funny these people get triggered. Maybe it's just me liking the underdog. Maybe it's just me liking that we have some degree of power to actually influence the emotions of these people who are suppressing us, especially in Europe, so heavily. So I was just surprised by your take on that. And my conclusion in my mind was, he's pretending that's not good work when it's clearly hilarious because he doesn't like Candace. And you've given your answer, which I respect. I was just highlighting why I thought that was weird, because I actually thought that was a fantastic series. And I think if it turns out she is right, I think that's very important. I would argue that's extremely important. And I mean, right now we have the problem with Keir Starmer in the UK. He got caught fucking Ukrainian rent boys. That we're not allowed to say that. I'm about to catch another charge for saying that right now. I'm trapped in Europe. And perhaps maybe you're saying America first, and as Americans, we don't care. I'm in Europe. They're the ones throwing me in jail. They're the ones fucking with my life. They're the ones who are constantly watching everything I say. They're the ones watching this stream right now, trying to raise charges on me. And the Western world, by and large, is the same thing. I think that you even said earlier at the beginning of this that America was founded on European white heritage. So we don't want to lose the ancient countries. We don't want to lose the original lands of the people we're trying to restore to glory. So I think she's doing fantastic work. And that's my personal view on it. I think she's doing fantastic work with it. And I was just surprised you disagreed on that point. That's all.
Yeah, well, and that's legitimate. I guess for me, your point about it's funny, like that does resonate with me, because I thought that way for a long time. I would look at something like that and say, oh, we're doing it for the lulz. We're doing it, because we're trolling Macron. We're trolling everybody. But what I have come to learn over the years is that a lot of the things that seem random or seem like they're based on hype, they're all coordinated. And that doesn't mean that everything...
That is true. That is absolutely true. And there are systems and there are groups and there are piles of money being thrown around. You're absolutely right about that. I want to make it clear. You're completely correct.
Yeah. So that's where and I'm not saying, and I said it on Bradley Martin, as far as Candace is concerned, I said everything I say about the Brigitte Macron thing is speculative. Is it a Russian operation? I said that is a theory. That's like a working postulate that I haven't really even researched, but just that's sort of where my gut says. And we just do need to be mindful. As I grow older, I see these kinds of memes, trends, and it's easy when you're 18 and you have no orientation of politics. You kind of like, when you're a kid, you don't know how this stuff works. And for me, I was a young edgelord. I was a young shit poster troll. And you'd see the bigger accounts in the group chats pushing a meme, a certain narrative, something. And you say, oh, I like this poster. I like Gavin McInnes. I like this guy, that guy, whatever. What they're pushing is funny. And I'm just using him as an example of a big poster. Yeah. And you go, yeah, we're going to join in on this. And as I get older, I realize a lot of that stuff is backed by money. It's coordinated. It is like, it's a domain of warfare. It's information warfare. And that's why I scrutinize it a lot more and I'm very careful. I fully believe that Candace believes what she's saying. I actually don't doubt her sincerity. I just think that whole narrative, maybe someone gave it to her. It might be a possibility. And even to the extent that it exists in Russia, it's either kookery or it is being picked up by an intelligence agency for some reason, because it's very strange and conspicuous, the whole thing. So especially this this idea that the West is like satanic pedophile elite. I don't doubt that there's something like that going on when you look at like Spirit Cooking and the Podestas and Pizzagate. I also think that sometimes foreign intelligence leans into narratives like that to sow discontent or dissonance inside of our society. And it's our job to discern those things. It doesn't mean that every narrative like that is fake. It doesn't mean, and not every narrative like that is true. It's up to us to discern. And so as far as the Brigitte thing is concerned, I think Candace is sincere. I don't find it very compelling. And I think at the minimum, it is being picked up by Russia on some level because Russia is adversaries with France. And as you know, the more you get into politics, the more you realize everything proceeds from intelligence and defense. Everything proceeds from the national security state.
Yep.
The energy needs, the technology, the media, information domain. These are all domains of warfare. We're in the age of complexity. And so if I can impress nothing else on my followers, it's that. It's all warfare. It's all ongoing, open, everyone against everyone warfare, even in the information space.
No, you made some very important points. And I'll make a quick personal story. Even when I was accused of human trafficking and locked up and all this bullshit, the American right never really disliked me in any regard. They all defended me. Even Ben Shapiro said that Andrew is correct about the things he says, but he has some of the wrong solutions, but he's by and large correct about the problems with society. The whole American right supported me. When I first got out of jail, there was nobody on the American right who disliked me until October 8th. when I told Piers Morgan that Israel was conducting a genocide. And then the entire American right turned on me instantly, saying that I'm a degenerate because I have sex with more than one girl and that I'm a terrible person and I'm a pimp and all these things. These were accounts that were defending me the day before. And that was organized inside of Telegram groups that I've had access to, and they were paid money to all instantly slander me and turn on me. So you're completely correct. You're also completely correct in saying this is being picked up by Russian intelligence. Yeah, it was. I was fighting in China when the George Floyd riots were going on. And before my fight, I was watching the Chinese news, and the Chinese news was saying that once again, America is in turmoil as all of its unhappy citizens riot against their oppressors. The black people hate the white people, and everybody hates the government equally, and everybody's dying. Did China instigate the George Floyd riots? I don't know. Or perhaps they just saw some division and jumped on it because that's what foreign intel agencies do. I don't think Russia told Candace to do it. And I know you lightly alluded to a theory that somehow her and I were getting paid by Russia or something. I can tell you from personal experience, that's absolutely not the case. So, yeah, they jumped on it, but I don't think that takes away any of the validity of what she's doing. You're right in saying that absolutely everything is run by the intel agencies. That is correct. We're in a permanent and endless state of never-ending war. And America and Europe as a whole, their only chance of competing against China is to ally, especially China and Russia now that they're so close. So I do believe that there has to be some degree in the European continent, some degree of interest. And I just think that perhaps, once again, I'm talking about feels and my instant thoughts when I saw your takedown of the Brigitte series. I just thought, is that really genuine from Nick, or is that an attack? And once again, this is a personal decision. This is me speaking from my personality. I wasn't the one who was attacked by them like you were, but I have been attacked by a lot of people who I still currently talk to, work with, or promote because I think it's better for the larger fight. So I agree with everything you're saying. I understand exactly where you're coming from. I think we're better as a team if we can all manage to work together. I also think there's a degree of, Hollywood and arguments and fighting. All these things are very interesting to the Anon who never has to put his face anywhere. You're never based enough for the Anon account who has nothing to risk and nothing to lose. And these people are trying to instigate the endless wars, and they like that we all argue because for them it's entertaining. And it's also great for them to come and write on my posts or Ian Carroll's posts or anyone's posts and say, you mentioned the Jews 99 times, but you didn't mention them 100 times, so you're a Jew. It's like, okay, well, you have nothing to lose, and you also, nobody listens to you, and nothing you say actually matters. And if you're going to be up here like you are, you understand very well the importance of nuance. You understand very well the importance of picking your battles. You understand very well the importance of being funny. The only reason you're not in jail is because you're funny. And the only reason I'm not in jail is because I'm funny. And a lot of these people who want to say the same things we say can't be funny. And humor is a shield. And a lot of people don't understand that. They're not smart enough to discern that we get away with doing what we do because we're funny with it. And there's a whole lot of things happening. And my point by and large for the Groypers is I believe in the movement. I think it's fantastic. I think it's fantastic if we all work together. I just highlighted that I didn't think it was genuine when you attacked the Brigitte thing, but you defended yourself and I accept it.
Yeah. Yeah, go ahead.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been a minute. No, so I was fixing a lot of the stuff behind the scenes. The lag is gone. Apologize for that. And I know you guys wanted to talk this stuff out, so I just wanted to make sure, let y'all get, the Groyper stuff, Candace, Tucker. I know that's like pressing stuff. But do you guys want to hit anything else before I go into the questions or whatever? Or
no, I think we sort of resolved the main stuff so far. So yeah, let's dive in.
Yeah. So basically I got a couple questions here, and I think it'll be interesting because, we can sit here and talk about certain topics and stuff like that. But I think these questions will give people a better insight as to, your guys' mindset on some things. So what I'll do is I got these questions. I'll answer it first to give you guys time to, come up with your own things because some of them are pretty thought-provoking. So I'll kind of keep it simple. So the first one I was going to ask was, looking back, what book, person, or event red-pilled you, right? And how did that change the trajectory of your content or public persona? So for me, the thing that red-pilled me, and I kind of broke it down into categories. What red-pilled me on women was reading The Mystery Method and a book called Conquer Your Campus when I was like graduating from high school, getting ready to go to college. Like that's what red-pilled me on women, figuring out this, this whole thing about how important social status is to them and how they're looking for a small percentage of men. That's like when I found out about like the 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle, right? what Jude me, I said what Jude me. What red pilled me on the Jews was 9/11 and JFK, right? No matter how you slice and dice it, there was absolutely Israeli fingerprints all over 9/11, all over the JFK assassination, especially when you look at the nuclear weapon component, which is almost never mentioned in mainstream American media. Hell, even the movie JFK by Oliver Stone did everything in their power to omit the nuclear weapons angle. And then you find out that the movie was funded by a guy named Arnon Milchan, who was literally Israeli intelligence from the unacknowledged nuclear program. So like they had an incentive to keep that information from Americans. And this stuff has been like suppressed for a while. So that definitely red pilled me when it came to that. And then when it comes to money, real estate, usury, and basically central banking is what red pilled me on money. So I'll turn it to you guys. I mean, if you want to break it down in categories, you can. But those are the things that I would say red pilled me on those three topics.
Andrew, you want to go in and
yeah, I can ask the question again.
First, isn't that how it works?
Yeah. So the question is basically,
I'm at the back of the bus.
Looking back, what book, person, or event red pilled you, right, and change the way that you would make content, or change the trajectory of how you would make content for the rest of your life? What was the red pill on women, just so to speak, or the red pill on finance, or whatever it may be? But either one of you guys could take it.
I'll run it then. I'll go. Should I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, a lot of my views come from personal experience. I wouldn't say they were a book as such. I wouldn't say it was a movie I watched that red pilled me. I would say that, Nick is definitely the figurehead of the movement against Jewish influence. And I think that I am and was the figurehead of the movement against feminism. And a lot of people have now come along and said that women are the foot soldiers of the Jewish influence. And perhaps that's true. But every single problem I saw with society led back to one place. And that doesn't mean they're bad people. It doesn't mean women are inherently evil. It means that societies have always been productive and functioned a certain way with a patriarchy. And it allowed us to fend off foreign invaders and reproduce and have children and be in love. And it allowed men to feel like they had a stake in society worth fighting for. Men used to paint a beautiful girl on the side of a Spitfire and go die. Like, we did all of this for women, not because we hated women. We didn't oppress women. We did it for them, in service to them. And it turns out they've been massively ungrateful for that. And nearly any problem you can name, I can tie back to one thing. And it comes down to girls chasing Instagram likes instead of children and not listening to men. So I kind of came to this conclusion myself. And by and large, I had this mentality for a very long time. And I didn't really blow up on the internet until COVID, when I decided to really fight back against the systems in the matrix, because COVID was complete insanity. And I was living in Sweden at the time in absolute freedom, by the way, with no mask, no vaccine, completely normal society, while the rest of the world were locked in their houses. And I thought, this is crazy. So that's when I started to blow up online and get big. And I never began the crusade intending on becoming the most Googled man in the world. A lot of people don't actually know that in 2022, before I was arrested, I was saying to Tristan, this is the story of Icarus. We're way too big. They're going to come and they're going to get us. Turns out the UK Foreign Office wrote to the Romanians, and I have that on paper. I have proof of them doing that, saying, shut this guy up. He's a national security issue, because they knew that my momentum had to be stopped. And if I were to continue to red pill and continue to mobilize the young men of the world, that they would lose their grip on society. And that's why, to this day, the UK government has an active warrant for my arrest, because they know if I go to England, the Bruv party will win the next election. They know that. So the second I land, I get thrown into jail for basically ever. And that's what they're doing to try and keep their grip on power. So a lot of it was just my own conclusions. And then I saw how upset everybody got by me saying these things. And I realized that if people are getting so mad by it, there has to be an element of truth to it. If I sit here and say the sky is green, everyone will ignore me. They don't care when you lie. They care when you say things that are close to the truth. And I kind of ran with it. And I wouldn't say there was any particular thing I read. A lot of it was just personal experience and tying it back to all the same problem, because I believe patriarchal societies, if our society became patriarchal tomorrow, we could instantly fix 95% of the issues we currently face. And if you look at the societies which are actually succeeding now, if you look at the Middle East and the societies that are successful from a birth rate perspective, from a safety perspective, from an economic perspective, they're all patriarchal societies. And my major point I was making is that the West has now become a matriarchy. America is a matriarchal society currently as it stands right now today. Even under Trump, it's matriarchal. If a man wants to have power, if he wants to be in Senate or be a politician, he has to parade his wife around for some reason. Putin doesn't have to parade his wife around. I've never seen the king of Saudi parade his wife around. What do their wife even know about politics? Why are they there? I don't know. But we live in this insane matriarchy where women have so much power over men, and they're using it to suppress and destroy the most masculine of men, which are the ones who are going to be tasked with defending the society. So I always had this gripe with that and that alone. And it turns out that big women are as powerful as big pharma and big education and big Jew, because they fucking came for me. They did not like what I said. And they came for me hard. And of course, they accuse you of crimes against women because it makes perfect sense for them to attack you with it. And here I am, 11 court cases deep. I've been federally investigated by the American government, the British government, the Polish government, the Hungarian government, the Romanian government. No one has enough evidence to put me in jail, showing that I'm actually completely more innocent than the man you walk past in the mall. If anyone else went through this level of shit, they'd be in fucking jail. So also tying back to our earlier conversation, there is part of me that thinks I've been through all this shit and then I get called a Jew and a Fed. Like, because I was the one who was red pilling the generation. I was the one who took all this risk to help everybody. And now you go on Twitter and call me these things. It does, even though you don't care, it does make you think, well, what's the point in trying then? And this is why the elites win, by the way, especially in my position. I have $700 million liquid. I can just fucking fuck off on a yacht and say, fuck those peasants and just go be one of them. And I don't do that. I sit here and I try and tell the truth and I try and be honest about things. And you get so little gratitude for it that I do believe when I'm talking about how our movements are subverted by the extremity on the inside of the movement, that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. And as Nick continues on his run, as he becomes more and more powerful, as he does more and more fantastic things and becomes a larger and larger political force, when X amount of his own movement turn on him and start calling him a Jew for something he once said, even he's going to sit there and go, this is fucking, what the fuck am I even trying for? Why did I get debanked for these fuckers? And that's what happened. So all in all, mine was just personal experience with women, bro. I mean, I didn't have to watch Fresh and Fit. I knew what was going on for a very long time.
Yeah. And I just added to what you were saying, because you were saying like, obviously patriarchy just went in general. And I would argue COVID was also like a big red pill, because since women tend to defer to the masses, the fact that we locked down, the fact that we had all these scares, that I think is very indicative of how much we value the communitarian nature of women.
Well, the reason they're so scared of me and the reason they're trying to get rid of me is because when you have women in charge of a society, you can use emotional arguments. It's not complicated. Yeah. You put women in charge and then you use an emotional argument to manipulate the women, and the women yell at their husbands and Matt Walsh says, okay. And then they sit at home all day. And that's what happens. So COVID was one big emotional argument, but grandma was the fucking argument for locking us all in our house for years. That's a female mentality. A man would sit and say, well, grandma's going to die anyway. Grandma's 94 and I need to go to work. So men can be more ruthless and more logical. So yeah, COVID was one big psyop run from the matriarchal frame, all of it. And every single man who was scared of his wife got the vaccine because of grandma. And every single man who was in charge of his women said, none of us are getting the vaccine. This is bullshit. Shut up and turn it off and live their life as normal. So yeah, absolutely. And the primary objective of the Matrix, and I'm fighting a different fight than Nick and a different fight from you, but I truly believe the reason they are so hard on trying to make sure in every movie, in the culture, in the law, and all of these mechanisms that women are above men is because they can simply scare the women or use an emotional argument on the women. And if they're in charge of society, then they have absolute control over the society and they don't need to convince us of anything. Men must be convinced. You have to convince me. You don't have to convince a woman. You have to scare her. And that's much easier to do when you put up some Chinese dude falling over. I never saw anyone fall over on the street, but in China, supposedly they're falling over left and fucking right. And chicks had a mental breakdown. So I went to war against that because I saw it was all just a matriarchal mindset. And maybe at a level deeper, yeah, certainly there are groups and people who are doing this on purpose and weaponizing women against men. They've certainly weaponized women against me. I mean, I'm the fucking, from personal experience, they call 1,000 women who know me and they find one idiot and I get dragged to jail. I mean, they certainly weaponize women against me. So perhaps women are not the tip of the spear. Perhaps they're the foot soldier. Perhaps they're the pawn and not the king and the queen. That's another argument. But that's where all of my mindset came from. And that's why I was on the crusade I was on. And a lot of people misinterpreted, and a lot of stupid people in my own movement misunderstood me and thought that means that you can beat the shit out of women or shoot them or run around, and all these crazy things, which once again gets applied to me and I go to jail. And that's not what I was saying. I was saying that the world's a happier place with men in charge. That's what I was trying to do.
What about you, Nick? I'll repeat it because I know we basically.
No, I remember.
Okay,
It's
yeah. What red pilled you?
Yeah, I got red pilled back in 2016, and it was a process like it is for everybody. I was a basic bitch conservative when I was in high school because I read all the libertarian stuff and I read all the conservative and neoconservative stuff, and I was a Ben Shapiro fan. Enough said. Yeah, that's just what there was. Back in those days, if you were a mainstream person, you had PragerU, Breitbart, you had, the usual suspects. And what red pilled me, Trump was a big part of it. Sam Hyde was a big part of it. But I had a buddy of mine. He was like autistic. He was a straight up Asperger's genius. And he was on 4chan all the time. And he was a good friend of mine. We were in Model UN and other stuff together. And I'll never forget, I must have been a junior or senior in high school. And he called me into this room when we were setting up for our Model UN conference. And somebody goes, "Oh, Nick, there's a sophomore that's saying the Holocaust never happened." And I was like, "Really?" So I go in, I hear him out. I said, "Yeah, that's sort of interesting." And then we went and we campaigned for Paul Nealon that summer, a couple of years later. And I was hitting him with all the Israel arguments. This is in 2016. I'm saying, but they fought 4 wars of extermination against Israel. Like Israel is this island of civilization in a sea of barbarians, all the usual shit. And he fought back and made the case for the Palestinians and for the Arabs and all this. And I said, wow, that's really interesting. And what really did it for me is I got to the point in college. There were a number of other things that happened to me over time. But I got to the point in college where I said, is it all a Jewish conspiracy? And I thought to myself, there's got to be an argument that it isn't. Like there must, are they really suppressing this truth? There's got to be like a book out there that debunks all this stuff. And then what really did it for me is that on 9/11 in 2016, during the election, if you remember, Hillary Clinton was like not well. She was sick. And on 9/11, she did a thing with Donald Trump, actually. They were both in New York for the anniversary of 9/11 on the same day, and she fainted. And they literally picked her up like a rag doll and threw her into a van. I don't know if you remember that video, but she was literally like rag doll, and they fucking tossed her in a van. And then 5 hours later, they had all these explanations. They said, oh, it was too hot. Oh, she actually had pneumonia. And she comes out of Chelsea Clinton's apartment and hugs like a little girl. And it's like, wait a second. So first you said it was too hot. Then you said she has pneumonia. But if she has pneumonia, why is she hugging this kid? And everyone in the media lied about it. And in that moment, I knew if they could lie about this, they could lie about anything because they're willing and they're able to lie. And if people are not willing to investigate it or dig deeper because of censorship, because of, it's a regulated press, I said, then they could lie about all this stuff. And that for me, that's when I realized this like benefit of the doubt could not be afforded to any narrative because that's really what it is. No one has investigated. The vast majority of people at that point had not investigated the 9/11 truth movement or the Holocaust or Israel or any of these things. All they had was the benefit of the doubt. That stuff is conspiracy territory. We believe the government. We believe the mainstream narrative. And I said, if they could lie about something that I saw with my own eyes, then we can't afford the official narrative, the benefit of the doubt on any of these things. And so that was the big break for me. It wasn't a book. It was just kind of this gradual noticing and kind of taking this tenuous frame, for how to perceive things and just seeing it confirmed over and over. And then when I saw that, I said, it's totally plausible that they're covering it up. And that was it for me.
Shit. So that perfectly dovetails into my next question. So my next question is, what was your first comment, tweet, video, or anything else that forever put you in the controversial category? And I'll go first on this one, then turn it to you guys. The thing that got me automatically put in the box of misogynist or whatever, which is kind of like how all this started, was back in 2020. I made a comment saying, if a woman flakes on a date, you need to punish that bad behavior, and she's got to go ahead and pay for the first round of drinks when you guys meet up on the reschedule. Right? And like The View and a bunch of, left-wing shows looked at it like, what, are we dogs? This guy's over here saying you gotta punish bad behavior. But what I was really doing was I was telling guys, like, you can't accept poor behavior from women and reward it. So you gotta, if she makes a mistake, you gotta make her pay for that. And they obviously likened it to training a dog, which, hey, maybe that's what I meant. But the point is that after I made that comment, because it went viral on TikTok, it got millions of views. And this is right after I had left the government, right? I wasn't even on the internet like that. And this is back when TikTok still had an organic, sharing ability with the algorithm. So I would say that was the first thing that kind of got me in there. And then obviously a bunch of other things I said about women and, top H and all this other shit. But I would say that's the one thing that started it. So what about you guys? I know you guys probably have a couple of things that put you on the map, but what would you guys say is the most controversial thing you said that put you in this box forever?
Nick?
Most controversial thing that got me in there? There was a lot of things over the years, one thing after the next. I would say it was the cookie joke is really what did it, because, and it's so stupid. It's always the dumbest shit, isn't it? It's never like your actual good jokes, your favorite jokes. It's always the stupid shit that they use. And, at that point, so, I got canceled in 2017 for just a lot of nonsense. And I was young and I wasn't very big. I was a very minor streamer. And then in 2019, I started to get a little traction because I was going really hard against Charlie Kirk and against Ben Shapiro. And it was going really well. And everybody was on my side. And what they used to kind of shoot me out of the sky was this joke where some super chatter sent in. They said, well, if the Cookie Monster has 6 million cookies, how long does it take to, whatever? And, they used that to frame me as a Holocaust denier. So up until that point, they could have said I was alt-right. Well, that doesn't mean anything. They could have said I was a white supremacist. Okay, they call everyone that. But then they took that joke and said, oh, he's a Holocaust denier. And they literally, at that point, that joke was a year old. I didn't even come up with it. Someone else sent it. Not that I don't own the sentiment, but it was such a stupid fucking thing. And then I get the Washington Post calling me and saying, do you deny the Holocaust? Do you believe it was 6 million? And I'm like, really? So that was kind of what really took me out for a minute. And, but they call me fucking everything. So there's a million reasons I'm canceled. But that was maybe the big one.
Yeah. I still use that reference to this day with the whole Cookie Monster thing. I think it's like a funny way to kind of bring it up. But what about you, Andrew? What would you say is the comment or tweet or statement that put you in the controversial box forever?
Yeah, I was around for a while and I was telling the truth for a while. And then on a podcast in Croatia, we were discussing the age of women. And I said that men prefer women who are younger. You prefer a woman who's 21 as opposed to 30. And the people asked why. And I said, because she's been fucked less. And I made the point that the more men who have fucked her, the less likely she is to truly fall in love with you. So I made this point that it's not pedophilia to like younger women. You're just trying to find a woman with less life experience because by and large, they've been fucked less than older women. Anyway, I made that point. The podcast came out. The next day, 400 different Instagram accounts had the same post and the same caption saying I was dangerous and misogynistic and homophobic and racist all at once. I didn't even say anything homophobic or racist. They just threw that in there. And this is where I always knew the Matrix was real, but it was kind of flabbergasting. The next day I woke up and 400 accounts had the exact same post about me. Also, the ADL said I was anti-Semitic on this day. I was like, I didn't even mention the Jews ever at this point. I never even mentioned them. And now I'm on that list. So that was really weird. And then 24 hours after that, I got the mass ban. Every single app on my phone logged out. My Gmail, my Skype, my Airbnb. I got banned on Instagram, banned on Discord. WhatsApp was banned. Every single application, they banned me overnight, and they started putting me on the BBC saying that I'm dangerous and I was banned for being a terrorist.
Was this worse than depression isn't real? Because I remember when you said depression
wasn't real, got traction, and a lot of people, were unhappy by it. But that was the one comment that really sent the world into overdrive. And I sat there and I thought, why are they so threatened by that? And the extension is very simple. If you tell men to have standards for themselves, you're now an enemy of the system because they don't want men to have any degree of standard. And that's where the right-wing Christians and the Catholics hate me, because they're basically saying don't have standards. They're saying meet a woman and marry her and do the right thing. Well, she's probably a fucking whore, bro. I'm not doing that. And they say I'm a bad person. Well, I make a whole bunch of white babies. I'm white enough. When I find a white woman, my kids look white as snow. So I'm out here having white babies. And throughout all of the bullshit I've been through, have any of my women betrayed me? We saw what happened with Crowder's wife and all these people. Have anyone come out and betrayed me? Some whores have come out and accused me of bullshit. Have any of the women with my kids or the women I'm close with betrayed me, let me down, or have they all stuck by me the entire way through? Like, I have good women around me with good loyalty inside of them. So I must be doing something right. But as soon as I told men to have any degree of standard for themselves and not instantly accept women and all their bad decisions, the entire system had a meltdown. And I think that's what really red-pilled me and made me realize that, yeah, big women's a thing.
What year was that, Andrew? What year
2021?
Was that? 2021.
I think it's a couple layers below, perhaps, the true power structures at the top. But women are certainly the pawns. They're the foot soldiers, convincing. And this is the thing that's so sad about it. And this is the thing when I make these tweets, which are deliberately prerogative and people attack me for them. They're deliberately using women to attack white men. Only white men listen to women. Black men don't listen to women. We don't listen to what they say. We don't care. White men are the only ones who says, well, the wife said one kid's enough. Well, if you're going to listen to her and she's a tool being used to get rid of your race, well, then you're going to go extinct. So I realized I really hit a nerve with that because of the massive backlash. And then my legal problems began. And then the UK Foreign Office wrote to the Romanians, and we all know the rest of the story. So that's when I really knew I was close to something. And big women is a serious fight. And I think a lot of people underestimate how much trouble you can get in for just saying as a man that you're allowed to have standards and you're allowed to expect loyalty and integrity from females. And you, for the same reason you don't want disloyal men around you, you don't want disloyal women around you. And their pasts do matter, because if someone was a thief their whole life, they're going to continue to steal. And if they were a whore their whole life, they'll continue to be a whore. And all of these things are very valid, but for some reason you cannot say them. And at the time, the internet was a lot more controlled. Nick, with all due respect, you barely saw him. They had his ass locked out. And I was around a little bit, but Kamala was in charge and all these things, and they did their very best to get rid of me. So that's when I really realized that they are very threatened by the basic idea of masculine integrity, sovereignty, and honor and strength. They're threatened by men who are not afraid of them. That's all it is. They're threatened by men who do not bend to peer pressure.
I got a question for you, Nick, because when it comes to women, me and Tate have a very similar ideology. Get sexual experience, increase your net worth, become the highest status you can be, and then kind of have your pick of the litter and get to a position where female sexual leverage can no longer control you, right? Someone like yourself, right? You're religious, you're devout Catholic. Obviously, you're young. You have a huge young audience that follows you. Obviously, on one end, you have the Catholic mindset where, monogamy, one wife, etc. But on the other hand, we know the realities of modern women now in 2025 versus 1955. And a lot of people that are your kind of counterparts, like a Matt Walsh, etc., advocate for the monogamy style, despite the fact that we're dealing with modern women. So as a guy that's like religious, right? That's religious, but still based to what modern women are. What's your take on this situation? How should men navigate the current sexual marketplace, in your opinion?
Well, I did a whole show about this on the Walsh versus Tate debate, and obviously I'm Catholic, so I do believe in one wife, one wife, monogamous, no adultery, no cheating, and you have kids. But I do think that the trad cats, the traditionalists, they're just not being honest about the deal. They want to LARP like it's the 50s, but it's not the 50s. And that matters. They're telling everybody, get married young, have more kids than you can afford. And that was the law, 100 years ago. Maybe that was the rule. That's what everybody was doing. But the whole situation was different. There was a social and cultural taboo against women even being like bossy, mouthy, sarcastic. They didn't want to be a shrew. They didn't want to be a bitch. They couldn't just divorce you with no reason. by themselves and then take your stuff and your kids. They didn't have group chats. They didn't have TikTok. They didn't have Instagram. It was a different world. And so, a lot of people it really is a reckless message. And they like to say out of this LARP, pandering to the crowd, they say, oh, yeah, get married young, have more kids than you can afford. You know what the elite would hate? Have more kids, all this kind of stuff. And my message to the young men is you really got to get solid before you consider marriage. And when you get married, it's got to be an extremely judicious decision. If you're going to have a wife, and I believe you should have one wife, you got to pick the right one. And when you pick the right one, you got to lay the ground rules early. A lot of these young Catholic men, they're so taken by the women because they have no experience with them that they become simps, and the women run their shit. And I see it. I know many people that are like this. I know many young men who are married and the wife runs their shit. She wears the pants. And these good little Catholic boys, it's almost like they buy into it more than the woman does. Because a good little Catholic guy says, oh, she's an angel. God gave me an angel and all this kind of stuff. And the woman is thinking, this pussy, I'm going to run this guy's life. I'm the one who's in charge of the house. And I hate seeing it. And for this, they call me gay. For this, they say I'm anti-family. For this, they say I'm a fake Catholic. They say, why don't you encourage your followers to get married? I think they should do it, but I think they should do it responsibly. And they got to put the women in their place. Here's the thing. I find women incredibly annoying. I'm a super high IQ person. I find most people annoying in general. I think women are dumber than men. I find them extraordinarily annoying. And I don't know how most men don't. And if I'm ever going to get married, the arrangement is not going to be that I'm getting nagged, that I'm getting told what to do, that I'm checking in with my wife. It's like, you're going to do your fucking obligations. You're going to leave me alone. And you're going to be my wife. You're not going to be my buddy. You're not going to be my best friend. You're going to be my damn ass wife. And a lot of people say, oh, well, that means you don't really like women that much. It's like, yeah, I kind of don't. I mean, not as friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I think about,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
They're annoying, dude. I talk to them every day. It's literally, I don't know anyone that enjoys the company of women. That fucking sucks. But continue, keep going. I'm just hilarious.
I mean, look, you want to fuck them and everything, but when I think about it, I want to go out and have the best time of my life. I think I want to go with my best male friend. I want to go with my best male friend who's intellectual and intelligent and risk-taking and that. I don't think we're going to go on a trip. You know what would make this really awesome? If my wife were here, if my fucking wife were alive, and here's the litmus test. If there is no possibility of sex at all, are you still going to have a great time with a woman? Absolutely not.
Yeah,
it's only fun if there's a possibility of sex, because the game is fun. The game of, am I gonna get laid? When men talk about that, that's the part that's fun. The part that's fun is not her witty banter. It's not her stupid fucking inane commentary. It's the fact that you're playing a game. It's like gambling. And anyway, so I try to explain that. It doesn't come across all the time, but that's kind of my, maybe my fence sitting position. I'm spiritually with Tate, but by law, I'm with Matt Walsh, I guess.
And that's kind of why I wanted to ask you that so much, because, and Andrew, me and you have had private conversations on this stuff for years, how much women annoy us and stuff like that. And I find it interesting that, and I'm going to turn it to you, Andrew, that they call us gay. They call us weird because we don't enjoy the company of women. We'd rather be around like-minded guys that are higher IQ so that we can make each other sharper. But then normies will sit there and be like, you don't want to be around women? You're gay. It's retarded. But go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I think white people especially have a very precarious scenario because they're on the risk of basically simping themselves into extinction. Like, whenever I see these OnlyFans girls say, I made $1 million in a day, I know there's not a single nigger who sent her $1. Like, that's all white people. That's white people. That's white boys. A lot of them are the same ones talking about getting married. And I can even talk about my webcam company I had, which I've been very honest and open about. All those were white men. They were all married. They all were, I love my wife, and then going to the toilet with a laptop, jerking off when their wife went to sleep. These people aren't even loyal. That's the worst thing about it. They pretend to be loyal, but perhaps they can't do any better, or they're scared of getting a divorce rate. They're not even actually genuinely loyal. So white people are in a really precarious scenario because they're the only ones who listen to women at all, and they're on the verge of basically simping themselves into extinction. The OnlyFans girl who just extorted Shannon Sharp and sued him for sexual assault and took all his money, took $10 million and quit her OnlyFans, all her stories now on Instagram are the Bible and Catholic Church, because she just got a fucking payout. And now she's walking around there. And I guess what? It's going to be some little white boy Catholic who meets her, holds her hand, and says, I can't believe that big black man did those evil things to you. You definitely didn't want him to fuck you like that, you poor thing. Let me marry you, love you, darling, and maybe get one kid out of it before he gets divorce raped and end up fucking sending money to some other OnlyFans girls. This is a big white problem. This simping shit is a white issue. It's a big one.
Especially married guys.
It's difficult. It is difficult. And I understand what Nick's saying about, he's a Catholic and he has certain rules and certain things he wants to live by. I get it. The life system I came up with was basically me just looking at the chessboard and going, okay, there's the game they want me to play. What's the best move on the board? How do I get children? How do I not end up being nagged? How do I not get divorce raped? How do I keep my sovereignty? And I made that decision to do those things so I can have 25 children because I believe that's the most important thing to do. But doing that has alienated a huge swath of people who then say I'm a bad person because I'm not married and I don't have one wife and I'm not Catholic and that I am a terrible Jew for some reason, not understanding that their mindset is the reason they are being replaced in their countries and they are simping themselves to extinction. They write to me that I'm a bad person with one hand and click Pornhub.com with the other fucking hand and jerk off to girls who are actually human trafficked. So the whole thing is so hypocritical and stupid. But by and large, yeah, there was a pretty simple societal contract which has now been broken. I'll take care of you. I'll protect and provide for you, and you'll do as I say. And that's now been broken, and women don't want to listen. And men are still expected, from the tradcons at least, to do all the work with none of the rewards. And I think, as Nick quite correctly pointed out, it's very dangerous to tell young men to go and sign up for that deal, especially when the full force of the law will come down anytime she wants and destroy the guy. So before, we're right. We have a lot of things to do when it comes to noticing, a lot of things to do when it comes to getting hold of the reins of power. That's all true. But we also have a lot of things to do when it comes down to the simple fact that we need people to have families that they're proud of, that they can reproduce within without being completely fucking decimated emotionally, financially, and most importantly, spiritually. No man is going to go to war for his country if he doesn't feel like the king of his own house. If he comes home and his wife doesn't listen to him and he's getting fucking henpecked, he ain't going to go and defend that street or defend that town. You're breaking the man's spirit. You're breaking his soul over a fucking toilet seat. And you're wondering why they get away with what they get away with. That's why big women's such a threat. That's why they push it so heavily. That's why they have the full force of the law behind them, who, by the way, are men with guns. Men. So it's a really precarious scenario, and I have a lot of young people who come to me and ask the same question, and I don't even have an answer because I'm in a very unique situation. I'm one of the most famous men on the planet with hundreds of millions of dollars. Of course, I can get women to have my kids. Of course, I can see them all. I fly my kids around on private jets all day and get them in and out the house a day. No one else can do that. If you're a normal man, what do you do? How do you set yourself up to win? It's extremely difficult, but it is a conundrum that must be solved.
Shit. So my next question, and this is a little bit more in depth, but obviously we talked about with you, Andrew, your comments on women in roughly 2021 that kind of put you on the radar. You, Nick, the Cookie Monster comment, getting ostracized by conservative media. At what moment did you say, okay, now I'm 10 toes down on this, right? Like, what made you say, okay, this experience right here, I'm 10 toes down. I could kind of go through me and then turn it over to you guys. For me, as you know, Nick, me and you had been talking about this for well over 2 years now, right? And I credit a lot of my knowledge on this topic of, us being, subverted to discussions I had with you, discussions I had with Ryan Dawson and many others. And at the end of 2023, when I got demonetized, banned off a bunch of different platforms, et cetera, for talking about this, because we were talking about this before October 7th. I want to make it very clear, just to add more credence to what you've been going through, Nick. If you talked about Israel, Zionism, any of this stuff prior to 10/7, you were pretty much guaranteed to be cooked off any mainstream social media platform, right? So we talked about it before then, and then what ended up happening is I got all this shit happening, right? So the thing that made me say, you know what, fuck it, was when I started seeing limbs of kids getting blown off. When I started seeing that we were paying for literally what's going on right now is a genocide. I think it's irrefutable now that what's going on is a genocide. Every single scholar that's a genocide scholar, hell, even Holocaust researchers are coming out and saying this is a genocide.
I said it on October 8th and got 11 months back in jail for it.
Yep. And that was still when things were hazy through the fog of war. But now I would say almost 2 years later, right? It's pretty apparent what's going on. So for me, after I saw what happened and how Israel responded and used our tax dollars to literally wage not just a war in Gaza, but to conduct a war throughout the entire Middle East, right? Like they've been doing with, a lot of these, like the clean break memo, whatever. That's when I said, you know what? I'm going to keep talking about this shit and they're not going to stop me. These motherfuckers robbed me of my money. They robbed me of my platform. I'm not going to let them get away with this shit. So that's kind of where I said, I don't give a fuck anymore. We're going to keep going. What was that moment for you guys?
Well, for me, I got canceled very young. I got canceled when I was 18, and there was really just no other option for me, because I basically got canceled within 4 months of starting my career, 3 months. I started my show on February 17. I was canceled by like March or April or May of the same year. And for me, it was the only way out was through. I knew that if I just took my lumps, I was just never going to work in politics. I had already been blacklisted. So the idea that I would get a job at Campus Reform or Daily Wire, PragerU, I was out. And I was out because of my views. I knew at that time, not even just my views about the Jews, but about race, about any of it, it was just not kosher. I could not get access or opportunities anywhere. It was so gay back then. People don't even realize, people forget that. And that's why I think I don't get enough credit, because back in 17, it was like you had to be on board with like limitless immigration and like gay marriage and feminism to be in the right wing, to have a job. Like I remember there were people at like Daily Caller that thought they were based because they would sneak in like the most entry-level red pill or something in an article or whatever. So I basically made the decision I was going to have to kind of build my own thing. I was going to have to do my own thing and change the culture, either make my scene on the outside so big, or by existing on the outside, change the inside. And that is what happened, either with some of my influence or probably just due to the course of events on some level. But it was very early on. I just made the decision that, look, I'm in politics. I'm just going to do it. I'm just going to figure it out one day at a time. So I was on the outside almost from the very beginning, and there was never going to be any other way for me. I guess the big thing was I tried to get a job in the conservative movement at the Leadership Institute, and I went there for a 2-week job training. And the first day they said, everybody in the class go up and down and answer the question why you're a conservative. And I gave this like speech. I was like, France is no longer France. America's no longer America. I'm like, if we don't close the damn borders to these immigrants, our civilization's gone. It's about the people. And which like nowadays it's like, okay, that's like 101. But the lady who oversaw the class, she was an immigrant herself. She tanked my application the first day. And so I said, wow, I can't even get an entry-level job at like this bumfuck like nonprofit or whatever, creating Leadership Institute chapters on college campuses. I was like, if I can't get a job here, this is really cooked. I got fired from RSBN like a week later. So that's kind of what did it for me. It's like, clearly I'm not going to be able to climb this ladder at all. So I had to go and just do it myself.
And let me, because I really want to have the audience understand this, right? So as you guys know, I cover dating, self-improvement, all this other stuff, right? I've been recently getting pretty involved in political commentary, right? Mm-hmm. And, me coming in as an outsider, right? And then coming in and seeing how the conservative media apparatus works. It's controlled by Jews, bro. It's fucking crazy. And I don't think people understand how much of a career destruction it is to be a political commentator in conservative media and not be supportive of Israel. It is literally a death sentence. So I just wanted to add a little bit more credence to what you're saying here, because until you go into that field and you see what's going on, you'll never understand how bad they will blackball you if you don't have the right opinion about Israel. And this is me coming in as an outsider observing this. So, bro, kudos to you, man. And I don't think you get enough credit for talking about this shit for so long. And literally losing everything for it, dude. Because conservative media is absolutely fucking run by them. But Andrew, what about you? What would you say was the turning point where you said, I'm 10 toes in now, fuck these assholes?
No, you're absolutely right, because it's an indefensible position by this point to still be defending Israel. And a lot of the mainstream conservative influencers are still trying to do it. In fact, it's tanked conservatism as a whole. I would argue that this whole Israel-Palestine debate has destroyed the whole idea of conservatism as a whole, because I have nothing against Charlie Kirk, for example. I don't know him. I've never spoken to him in my life. I've seen him on the campuses destroying people about the basic things, about, transgenders or whatever. I have nothing against him. But the second he defends Israel, it's indefensible. It's indefensible. There's no way to defend blowing children to fucking pieces. You can't do that. And the fact that they still try to do it, even though it's a completely indefensible position, shows how afraid they are of the blackballing and of the backlash. My mentality was, I guess, perhaps I came to this conclusion, which isn't completely correct, but I like to believe that our enemies, although they're evil, they're not particularly special individuals. They're not particularly unique. They're not actually great people. They're evil people, but they're not great people. And this was my conclusion from going from a Luton Council estate, single mother household, mixed race guy, all the way up to like the Bugatti Owners Club and hundreds of millions of dollars. And my entire way up the chain, I was like, so where's the good people at? Where's the amazing individuals? And you get up to the top and realize that everyone's a fucking dipshit. Even the people who are running the country is a dipshit. Even all these people with all this power is a dipshit. Keir Starmer's a dipshit. They're all fucking dumb. And I came to this conclusion that somehow all of the people who have agency amongst themselves, who are unafraid of the cancellation and peer pressure, who are charismatic, who are mentally strong, these people always seem to be on the right side. And all the people who are on the wrong side, although they may have power on paper, are very extraordinary individuals. They're really not impressive people. And I guess from there, I just kind of started to push my audience. My message is very base level. It's very mental strength, physical strength. Don't be afraid. Get rich so they can't cancel you at your job. Stick up for yourself. Escape the matrix. Be sovereign. And then I added all this in with trying to encourage men to be charismatic, to say what they need to say in a way that people are going to agree with them. Like me and you have done it on Fresh and Fit. We'll sit down, talk to a bunch of whores, and by the end of it, have them saying, yeah, I'm a whore. I shouldn't have done that. Like that's the job, right? So by trying to just encourage masculine strength and charisma in the by and large, I was trying to bring people over to our side of the fight, because I think our enemies are actually the most unimpressive people on the planet. So once I felt like that was the way out, I just doubled down on it. It wasn't only just about me. I know Andrew Tate fans train mentally and physically. I know Andrew Tate fans are hard to intimidate. I know Andrew Tate fans will say what they believe in. I know Andrew Tate fans are trying to get rich. I know Andrew Tate fans. I know what they're doing. And by and large, anyone who does those things falls on the right side of history. So that was my decision.
Okay. Let's see here. Okay, here's a good one that I want to so what do you guys think is the most misunderstood position that you hold? Right? That people always mischaracterize. If you do an interview, it's almost guaranteed to fucking come up, right? And knowing what you know now, how would you reframe it? I can go ahead and go first here on this one. So one of the positions that people always get fucking pissed off at me about is I say, need to have sex with 50 women before you start thinking about even getting married, right? Make 6 figures a year, have at least half a year of savings in a bank account somewhere, be in good shape, obviously be 35 years old or older, and then have 50 women. Now, no one really argues with me about the 4 things I mentioned before, but when I talk about having sex with 50 girls, people really harping on that 50 number and say that's degenerate, blah, blah, blah. But the reason why I say that is because I want guys to be in a position where sex is no longer novel to them, right? So that they can be in a position of dominance where their girl can't leverage sex against them for compliance, right? This happy wife, happy life bullshit, right? Just because I understand how feminism and modern women in general have changed the dating dynamic or the marriage dynamic to even to the point where we got people that are religious like Nick that can even acknowledge it. So a lot of people mischaracterize that position. It's like, oh, it's got to be a hard 50. Look, dude, it could be 5. It could be 1. But my point is I just need you to get to a point where sex is no longer novel to you and your wife can't hold it against you. So that's my position that people always fucking misconstrue and try to attack me on. But when I actually explain it full through, then they're like, oh, that makes sense. But you know how people are. They watch clips. They don't watch full content ever. So what would you guys say is one of your positions that's always fucking mischaracterized, and you got to clarify? And then if you could do it again, how would you reframe it now knowing what you know?
I mean, it depends on where it's coming from. With regard to the normie crowd, it's like everything, and it's always been everything. They mischaracterize my position on race, Israel, women, you name it. Or if it's from the right, I would say the biggest one is that I'm an extremist. I mean, I don't think I'm an extremist at all. I think I'm moderate. It's kind of like my new thing, because I talk to these people and they're anticipating me to be like a caricature of a skinhead or something like that. And when it really comes down to it, with regard to all these different issues, I think that what is called far right, what is called anti-Semitic, what is called white supremacist, it's really just reality. I had a clip that went viral over the past couple of weeks where I'm talking about black people in Chicago. And we emerged from a time recently where there was so much political correctness around the subject of race and race relations between blacks and whites. And so I think the conversation is sufficient now. People see my take, and what I'm saying is like, look, the city is a shithole, and it's a shithole because you got carjackings happening all the time. It's because you have this like impropriety everywhere. We talk about black people in America, people talk about fatigue, fatigue from dealing with black people. It's like we all know in our lived experience in our day to day, what we can expect from black people is people being inconsiderate, people being rude, aggressive, menacing, not following the rules. And that's kind of always been my position. Is like, on some level, people look at a person like myself or others and they think we want to ship all the black people out of America. We want to kill them all or something like that. And it's like, they've been here forever. They've been here for 400 years. They've been here longer than my family's been here. We just want them to behave. We just want to hold everybody to a standard where people are polite, respectful, clean, decent, peaceful, and the rest of it. And it's like, now that I'm back on these mainstream platforms, I do a monologue about it. And even the black people are all saying, yeah, I agree with him. I get where he's coming from. So, that's just like one example. I think that we really just need to return to common sense, and not like the gay common sense like Donald Trump, where, he says common sense is like no transgenderism. I'm talking about like old school racism being common sense, where it's like, yeah, we all know not all black people are bad. We also know what's going on with them, and yeah, we don't have some weird desire to like dominate women or, bully them. But we're also like, yeah, they kind of need to be put in their place. They do need a strong hand. They do need someone to treat them in an assertive way. And even as far as the Jews are concerned, for centuries, for millennia, we know what's going on with the Jews. Now, we don't want to kill them all. We don't want to hurt them. People say you're a Nazi. You want another Holocaust? Absolutely not. At the same time, we know they fucking love Israel and they're very tribalist. Is it a good idea to have them run in Congress when they're walking in with an IDF uniform? Obviously not. So we just need that kind of like old school common sense. I would say that's maybe the rebrand. I would say I'm moderate. That's the misunderstanding.
Yeah, taking trips to Israel when they should be figuring out the Epstein files, shit like that. And I'll tell you this, Nick, like, it's funny to me because, people that aren't familiar with you or whatever, one of the first things they say is, you're friends with a white supremacist. And I'm like, this guy hates black people. Why are you even around? And I'm like, that's not true. Like, he doesn't. I know him in person. I've known him for a few years now. Very cordial, very nice. And then people forget that you literally helped Ye with Ye 24. So if you were so racist, why would you be helping a black man become president of the United States? So I always laugh when they say this stuff, when they say that dumb shit. But what about you, Andrew? What would you say is one of your positions that's always mischaracterized whenever you do interviews? I know a lot of people, there's a bunch with you, I know they mischaracterize.
Yeah, but none of the mischaracterizations are genuine. None of them are genuine mischaracterizations. It's Divine People hoax all over again. Yeah. It's the wrap-up smear. They do it on purpose, and they know exactly what they're doing. They take something you've said and they take a small part of it and they take it out of context and they repeat it over and over and over again. As I said, the whole Christian, even the Jewish right wing, no one had a problem with me really till I talked about October 8th, and they had a huge issue with me all of a sudden. And it was all instant and overnight, and it changed instantly and completely. So none of it's genuine. And, Nick's pointing out very basic pattern recognition. That's why humans are alive. We learned the pattern recognition that if you go near the tiger, you get eaten by the tiger. Yep. If you eat that plant, it's poisonous. It's fucking pattern recognition at this point. It's not racism. It's not anti-Semitism. The things we're pointing out are simply very well-known pattern recognition, and people are too afraid to say them. But I don't think any of my viewpoints are genuinely misunderstood. I don't believe I could have said them in any other way to make people understand them. I believe no matter how I said it, they would have taken it, twisted it, and weaponized it. And one of the things that's most important you have to understand about the world is when they weaponize things against you, they always weaponize virtue. They're not going to weaponize the fact that, they're not going to sit there and pretend that you're a bad person unless they get to be a great person. So they're going to come along and pretend they give a shit about women so much so they can attack me. And they're going to come along and pretend they give a fuck about the Holocaust so they can attack Nick and you guys and me. It's all just weaponized virtue garbage. It's the oldest trick in the book, but a lot of people still fall for it. So if you're going to tell the truth in this world, if you're going to sit there and say, yeah, this is the actual reality of what's happening, you're always going to get pinned with some bullshit, no matter how you say it. And the most important thing you can do is not give a fuck and double down. Every time I got in trouble, the BBC used to print articles about my emergency meetings when I said racist words. So then I started saying them 15 times a show, so many times that they can't print it anymore. You can't do the same article every fucking day, nigger. So I just kept doing it. You have to double down on it. And a lot of people are afraid to do that because of the backlash. But no matter what you try and do and say, they're just going to attack you with it all day long.
Speaking of mischaracterized positions, and I kind of want to throw this to Nick real quick, because I think I've been seeing so many people talk about this, and I don't think they give you a fair shot. So we got a lot of people watching right now. By the way, guys, if you're watching on Fresh Fit, I'm going to switch over to Myron Gaines X on both Rumble and YouTube. So come on over. I'm going to end the Fresh Fit stream here in a second. But I'm going to ask this question first. So, Nick, a lot of people say that you are a undercover Dem. You used to support Trump. Now you don't support him. You have an issue with J.D. Vance. You're criticizing him because you're a hater, right? People come at you and say that you're doing, you're trying to mess with the Republican Party, blah, 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 right? Now, I know the reasons why, right? And I make sense. But I don't think, people have give you a fair shot when you give your criticisms of Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance. And I want to give you credit as well because you called it April of last year that J.D. was going to be the vice president. And then, boom, fast forward to July in the RNC, and he gets, put in there. Because I remember I was there, right? And the first thing he's talking about is attacking Iran, punch him in the nose. So I think it's pretty much undisputed now in the right wing, conservative media, that your predictions have been damn near flawless. So if you could kind of just go over, because I think a lot of people mischaracterize your position on Trump and on J.D. Vance. I'll kind of just throw it to you there, and you can just take it wherever you want. And guys, come on over to Myron Gaines X on everywhere. On Rumble, YouTube, whatever. I'm going to end the Fresh Fit stuff, but go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the whole Democrat thing is concerned, it's very amusing to me. It's very amusing. I almost don't even mind it because, people are fucking retarded about politics. Like on some level, you'd like to think that we're starting to get it. The people are waking up. They see what Israel's doing. And then at the same time, you have to keep the Pareto principle in mind, the 80-20 principle, which is that 80% of the population is scum. They're just worthless scum. Now, they're not worthless, but they're low IQ followers, whatever you want to call it. It's a 20-80 principle or an 80-20 principle. And here's what I mean by this. As far as I'm concerned, we are so through the rabbit hole. I got red pilled when I turned 18 and I was in college 10 years ago, whatever it was. And we're at the point now where you have these basic normies. They're just discovering Israel. At the same time, I go and criticize Trump for something or another thing. And people say, yeah, but I mean, the Democrat would have been worse, don't you think? But the Democrats would have been far worse. This is better than Kamala, wouldn't you say? And to me, this is just such a basic mechanism of control, which is how the regime will play the right off of the left. I almost feel like it's passé. It's trite to even suggest that the right and left are the same. And yet it needs to be said over and over and over again. The Republicans are just as bad as the Democrats. They always have been. Who brought us to Iraq? The Republicans. Who made the economy the way it is? Republicans. Where did NAFTA come from? Yeah, Bill Clinton signed it, but it came from the Republicans. It's like, so, people like to say, oh, but the Dems, but the left, but this, that, and the other. The Republicans are the same. They are virtually the same. The platform is effectively indistinguishable. They have the same donors. They go to the same parties. They're the same people. And so, like Dinesh D'Souza and I debated back in June, and Dinesh said this to me. He said, you're starting to sound like a Democrat. I'm like, Democrats, Republicans, are we really still doing this thing? As far as I'm concerned, it's like there are the people that are
So what is the bare minimum age and maximum age the man can be for you?
Maximum age?
Yeah.
I would say for me, probably like 25.
Okay, minimum age.
Minimum 18.
Okay. Minimum height. Bare minimum height that he's got to be.
I'm pretty short, so I don't really care. As long as you're taller than me.
Okay, what is that?
Good.
How tall are you?
I'm 4'10". So like.
So if he's 4'11", you'll take it?
Nah.
Okay.
Nah.
So then give us the number.
5'1". Like 5'7" at least.
All right, 5'7". Okay. Yeah. Man,
definitely. I need to wear heels too. Like
yeah.
he has to be taller than heels.
All right, we just hit 1,000 guys. Let's get to 2K. Like I said, we're taking over 2025. Let's go, guys. And we need to get back in the algo of YouTube and the engagement, how you do it. Race.
For me?
Yeah, what race?
I don't care.
White, Hispanic,
I don't
other,
care.
black, Asian. Indian?
I don't care.
Wow.
Yeah,
Like, thank you, come again?
Yeah, go for it.